Yes.
These are the certificates.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you like to?
I think probably up here somewhere. Okay. Okay. And when I'm having this, they come up here for the certificates. Yeah. Okay.
And then the text is actually in the script.
Okay. Right. And that text is also. Okay. Yeah. I got this.
And I'm going to leave this here too in case you talk about it.
Okay.
If you want.
Okay. Probably just hand it to John.
Yes.
John.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Are you familiar with this group? Death penalty focus? Yeah. This is to stop the death penalty. The guy who runs it, he was with ICUJP. He might be here. He's a retired actor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he might be here. Robert, yeah, he has done a lot of work with children. He's a producer. He's been with ICUJP from the outset.
عيناك غابة نخيل ساعة السحر أو شرفتان راح ينأى عنهما القمر. عيناك حين تبسمان تورق الكروم وترقص الأضواء كالأقمار في نهر. ومقلتاك بتطيفان مع المطر. ومقلتاك بتطيفان مع المطر. وعبر أمواج الخليج تمسح البوق سواحل العراق بالنجوم والمحار. كأنها تهم بالشروق فيسحب الليل عليها من دم دثار. العراق ليس فيه جوع. مطر 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 في كل قطرة من المطر، حمراء أو صفراء من أجنة الزهر، وكل دمعة من الجياع والعراض. وكل قطرة تراق من دم العبيد، فهي ابتسام في انتظار مبسم جديد، أو حلمة توردت على فم الوليد في عالم الغد الفتي. واهب الحياة، واهب الحياة، واهب الحياة. ويهطل المطر ويهطل المطر.
When George Regas used to speak, he often quoted Sophocles, but I have a feeling that he would forgive us today if we wanted to quote a little bit of Paul McCartney. All my life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. And that's because Paul McCartney wrote this song in honor of the civil rights workers working in Little Rock for educational equality, something that was so near and dear to George Regas' heart. Please join me in welcoming Keita Matsuna and Kenton Shen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Holman United Methodist Church. It's a delight to have you here on this very special occasion, the 23rd Annual George Regas Courageous Peacemaker Award on this September 8, 2024. I would now like to introduce Aisha Mason. Aisha Mason joined ICUJP in 2001, shortly after 9/11. She is a master practitioner at the Agape International Spiritual Center, where she co-founded Common Unity, the community service ministries. She is also the founder of the Center for the Advancement of Nonviolence. In 2017, Aisha retired from American Friends Service Committee, a Quaker-based international peace and justice organization, where she served as the Associate Regional Director for the United States West Region. Today, she continues to be engaged in social justice advocacy, teaching, and writing. She will now engage in the land acknowledgement.
Welcome, everyone. We begin today's ceremony with this acknowledgement of those who are the keepers of this land. Our intention is to come to this place with respect. We come with open hands and with open hearts to connect with the people whose blood and spirit is in this land. We meet on the traditional territory of the Tongva people, the Tatiavim, the Serrano, and the Chumash peoples, who are also known as the Gabrieleno. At the time of European contact, there were more than 100 villages, over 4,000 square miles in the LA Basin and Channel Islands. The Tongva people have suffered generational atrocities, historical injustices, and discrimination, but over many generations they have resisted and they have persevered. Today, the Tongva people continue to build economic and cultural wealth. They are determined to live with dignity and thrive. And so we honor and pay respects to their elders and their descendants, past, present, and emerging leaders, as they continue their stewardship of these lands and waters. We thank you.
Friends, it's my delight to introduce to you, with not too much fuss, the Reverend Victor Cyrus Franklin, the appointed United Methodist minister, senior pastor of Holman United Methodist Church.
Well, thank you, Reverend Chase, and welcome all here to Holman United Methodist Church. And also on behalf of all of the members of Holman Church, I'm sure you were welcomed warmly from our greeters as you came into the campus, and also from those who were serving and leading in music. It's with gratitude, really, that we welcome you here. It goes without saying, we stand on the shoulders of giants here in this congregation. And among those giants, of course, is one of ICUJP's founders, the Reverend James M. Lawson Jr., whom passed away just a couple of months ago, and as well as Mrs. Dorothy Lawson, who passed away a couple of weeks ago and whose services will be here later in the month on the 28th of this month. That it's on their shoulders and on so many others we stand as we seek for Holman to be a hospitable place for organizing power, organizing space for justice for persons, of course, from the Christian tradition. We are Methodists, but we also have the Black Methodist religious tradition, which has some unique tangents, if you will, from some of the historic Christianity. But an organizing space for justice and power and peace across religious, faith, and spiritual traditions. That's what we're striving for Holman to continue to be. And so with respect to the honorees who are here today, who we've come to celebrate, and we're all of our friends and siblings and comrades in the struggle in this space, welcome to Holman Church. Of course, we have much to continue to learn from each other and to learn from the divine to contribute to a shared struggle for justice and peace in this community and throughout the world. There's a great hymn of the Christian church that says, "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." It is clear that ICUJP says, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with us as we break down the barriers and the walls across religious and faith and cultural traditions and the struggle for peace across the globe. We continue this great tradition in dismantling systems of domination, separation, and oppression. From Irvine to Israel, Palestine, let freedom ring. I also just must say with regrets, I cannot stay for the entire program. We have a youth event that we've organized for this afternoon before we knew this was coming, so I apologize. I need to step away to be a part of that time. But no, my heart and spirit is not with us just for this moment, but for the continued work and struggle ahead to create peace and justice in our communities and throughout the world. So again, welcome to Holman Church. Let us march on until victory is won. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Victor. Another prophetic voice in our midst. I'm the Reverend Louis Stace, a former chair of ICUJP and currently the Minister of Community Outreach here at the Holman United Methodist Church. Thank you for joining us. We at Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace would like to thank the following organizations and individuals for their help and support for this event. Our co-sponsors, Addicted to War, All Saints Episcopal Church, Courage to Resist, the Harriet Tubman Campaign, If Not Now, the Islamic Center of Southern California, the Jerusalem Prayer Project, the Justice for Palestine Campaign, Los Angeles, KPFK 90.7 FM radio station, the Leonard I. Behrman Foundation for Justice and Peace, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, St. Camillus, and we also thank the great staff of the Holman United Methodist Church, especially Betty Fontenot and David Sears, and the folks at Audio Video West and Media Solutions by TSC for their technical support. It has been 23 years ago, this coming Wednesday, since the attacks on 9/11 in New York City, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, killed nearly 3,000 people and injured more than 6,000. On that day, the United States had a choice. The George Bush administration could have treated the attacks as a violation of US and international law, launched a criminal investigation, and brought the perpetrators to justice in accordance with the rule of law. The Reverend George Regas, based on his long experience, feared that the US government would take a different and more dangerous path. He convened a gathering of friends and colleagues whom he knew to be dedicated to the struggle for justice and peace. And so, Interfaith Communities, United for Justice and Peace, was founded. Thank you. It would soon adopt the mission that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. Tragically, George's worst fears came true. President Bush waged endless wars against Afghanistan and Iraq, pushed through Congress the USA Patriot Act, opened the notorious detention center at Guantanamo Bay, which remains to this day, rounded up Muslims and South Asians for indefinite detention, initiated a wave of civil liberties and human rights violations, and committed wholesale torture against detainees and others. ICUJP believes religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. All of our peace workers are committed to 4 core ICUJP principles: the power of love to overcome hatred, the power of mercy to conquer vengeance, the celebration of our common humanity and the sacredness of human life, and our calling to build a just, equitable, and peaceful world. We have presented over 1,000 programs, conferences, and webinars on issues of human rights, civil liberties, racial and economic justice, and the quest for peace. For 23 years, we have met with elected leaders, supported legislation, and organized vigils and demonstrations. 4 visionary religious leaders were instrumental in the founding of ICUJP. the Reverend George Regas, Rabbi Leonard Behrman, the Reverend James Lawson, and Dr. Mahir Hathout. They would be the first to say that many other religious leaders and activists, many of whom are with us today, were also responsible for the creation and development of ICUJP. Sadly, all four of those founders have now passed away. But it can truly be said, as evidenced by our presence here today, that their legacies are alive and well and reside in each of us. Today, we gather to pay tribute to those four remarkable individuals, to recognize other tenacious advocates in the cause of justice and peace whom we have lost over the years, and to honor the work of three extraordinary individuals who have taken up the torch to continue this struggle. We need courageous peacemakers today, as we have needed them in every generation. Friends, peacemakers, we are very grateful for your support and that you have joined us today. Let us give each other a round of applause. I will now introduce a person who is familiar in ICUJP circles, Robert Corsini. He has been able to share his unique talents as a director, producer, and videographer with us at ICUJP, as well as other organizations and individuals involved in the justice and peace movement. He created Videocratic Media in 2014 to channel his skills into producing meaningful, non-fiction stories and to deliver high-quality broadcast video content at a time when archiving these seminal events for future generations is more important than ever. Robert Corsini.
Thank you. Take care. It's quite an honor to be here. After all these years of events and people I've met, it's been pretty extraordinary. Windows into our world and our religiosity and our sense of being that most people never would ever have that chance. I've been able to sit down with these great men you're about to see some clips from. They've inspired me at every level in all of my conversations, all my interviews. When I see them, when I have seen them do their work over the years, pretty much inspired me to keep doing this kind of thankless work and oftentimes of producing this kind of content, but I think it's essential that this material has been preserved. I have to say that in preparing for this event, it forced me to look at an endless stack of hard drives of material and to try and find just the right kind of thing that was good for this moment, for this crowd. And it was there. It just took a little effort. I didn't have any hair to lose left, so I was okay at that level. But I think what really stood out was not only what their great work has been, but what also has been the work of others who have stepped up, who have worked with them and took their inspiration into the real world and continue this hard work of organizing and engaging people to stand for what they believe in, to stand for what is right. And I think that's all the reason why we're here, continuing to do this kind of work. And I feel honored to have been able to have had this window and this opportunity to meet all of you who are integral to this process, and of course now to have the responsibility to archive their legacy, I think is incredibly important, and I'm really pleased I'm able to share a lot of this material with you today. So that's all, and we're gonna roll our next set of video clips.
ICUJP was formed in response to 9/11. We were troubled and profoundly saddened by the cries for retaliation. Yes, some response to that vicious attack was important, but not the devastation of war. We felt 9/11 demanded the work of justice. We disavowed the path that said our grief must lead to war. We refused to accept violence as the necessary consequence of our tragic loss. And over these 10 years, two positions have been dominant for ICUJP. One, religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. And two, recognizing the war system is deeply embedded in America. Nevertheless, we affirm our membership in one human family. And we have proclaimed over these 10 years that the sin, the evil of these wars in Afghanistan and Iraq is the belief that an American child is more precious and sacred than an Iraqi child. America's enormous resources of wealth and technology should be used for health and education and peacemaking, not for the wars of destruction in the building of an empire.
9/11 was an earthquake. Not shook only the Muslims, it shook America. And it was natural that people who care should huddle together. That was accentuated by a sharp rising in hate crimes against the Muslims. And against even people who look like Muslims, like the Sikh, for example. The first one who was killed was the Sikh, who was not a Muslim. So people of goodwill felt that this is not the America we want. And this is not what our perspective religions are teaching. So it was very natural that these crystals should coalesce to become sizable and effective and palpable. And they stood very firmly with us, protecting our mosques and giving us a forum to speak, and I will always appreciate that.
Bless our feet, straight from the places of God where we bend thee. Bless our hearts,
interfaith work in Los Angeles and a variety of other places in the United States has developed in primary form because practicing religionists in the Islamic, Jewish, Christian religions in the United States, because we are a strong bed of this, but also in Hinduism as well, a strong sense that human preciousness, humanity has a sacredness about it, and that teaching and that sense of love and compassion is to be found in all of the major world religions, as well as in much of the poetry and literature of the past of the human family. So ecumenical interfaith work has been one of the forms of religion in most of the 20th century. That whole process has been troubled and hurt by the various ways in which racism and male chauvinism has come to the attention of the nation. Many of the ways in which this is expressed in the media in the United States today never took place in the 20th century. So this is strictly an evolutionary process. An evolutionary process that has been encouraged by Black Lives Matter campaign, and by GLBTQ organizing, by all kinds of people in the United States who've recognized some of the chains that are on the human race and how these have to be dismantled, unshackled.
I've always believed that religion has to be political. Has to be political because politics has to do with the decisions that we make about how we live and how we die, and who shall live and who shall die and who shall experience justice and equity in the workplace and so forth. I mean, that's where those decisions are made, and that's where religion has to be. And that doesn't mean necessarily partisan politics or voting for particular individuals, but it does mean that we're concerned about the profound ethical issues that lie at the heart of so many of the decisions that will determine how we're going to live as a society. And religion has to be there. Religion, that is indifferent to those concerns, I think is not really being true to itself. I mean, not that we're not concerned about what's happening to the individual human being and the need for a spiritual experience, a concern for the sick and the wounded, of spirit and we're concerned about those issues as well. But justice and peace, without them there can be no real human, certainly no humane kind of living. And that, I think, is the responsibility of people of faith. Or at least there have to be within the faith community those who accept that as a burning obligation and a call to conscience.
Thank you so much, Robert. Okay. We are going to make one slight change in the program. Hammer Sharp of the Holman United Methodist Church and Dr. William Campbell, our Director of Music here, will make a presentation, after which Aisha Mason will introduce the founders.
Come, live in the light, shine with the joy and the love of the Lord. We are called to be light for the kingdom, to live in the freedom of the city of God. We are called to act with justice. We are called to love tenderly. We are called to serve one another, to walk humbly with God. Come, open your heart, show your mercy to all those in fear. We are called to be hope for the hopeless, so hatred and blindness will be no more. We are called to act with justice. We are called to love tenderly. We are called to serve one another, to walk humbly with God. We are called to act with justice. We are called to love tenderly. We are called to serve one another, to walk humbly with God. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for these. That's one man scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable.
I'm glad it took a minute to walk up these stairs because I never hear that song without tearing up. It moves me every single time, and I think it's so appropriate for the four men that we are honoring today, because that song definitely defines what their passion was about. We are honoring four extraordinary men, all of whom they gathered together to form the Interfaith Communities United for Peace and Justice. Oof. And for short, we call it ICUJP, which is not so short, but shorter than our other title. All of these men, of course, lived fruitful lives. But what is really true about them is they never lost sight of why they were here on this earth. They never missed an opportunity to speak truth to power. And they never missed a chance to enjoy each other's company and eat good food and laugh together. Rabbi Leonard Bierman passed away on December 24th of 2014 at the age of 93. Dr. Maher Hathout passed away on January 3rd, 2015 at the age of 79. Reverend George Regas died 6 years later on the exact same day, January 3rd, 2021, at the age of 90. And Reverend James Lawson passed away this year on June 9th at the age of 95. Some of us were blessed to know all four of these gentlemen, and as I watched that video and as I recalled these 23 years, I know that I was in the presence of greatness, and by that I mean spiritual greatness. Spiritual greatness. Because they all made a commitment to making change in their communities and on this planet, but each of these men was so first and last a man of God. So today we have an opportunity to speak with some of the people who were closest to them, people who will share their memories with us and reflect on the legacy of their loved ones. And at this very tumultuous time of heartache, of upset, of grief, we would have rejoiced to have had their guidance and wisdom to assist us. And yet, their spirit is alive in each one of us. So I'd like to invite to our stage Jane Olson, who is a very dear friend of George Regas, Judith Bierman O'Hanlon and Eve Bierman, who are both Rabbi Leonard's daughters, Salam al-Mariati, who tells us that he is a spiritual son of Dr. Maher Hathout. And is John Lawson here? Yes, please come forward. He is one of Reverend Lawson's sons. Please join me in welcoming all of them to the stage. So we'd like to begin, can you hear me? All right, great. We'd like to begin by inviting each one of you to tell us the importance of interfaith work for your loved one. Why was this a high priority in their lives? Can you repeat the question? for the person that you're here to represent. Why was interfaith work so important to them?
I'm Judith Bierman O'Hanlon, and my sister Eve and I are here to represent our late father, Rabbi Bierman. Throughout his life, he spoke out frequently and fearlessly against war, injustice, and human suffering, and conveyed his moral convictions through his activism. Much of his work was done side by side with leaders of other faiths committed to the same causes, like George Regas, whom he met in 1967, or James Lawson after he came to Los Angeles in 1974, or Hassan and Maher Hattout, whom he met slightly later. Our family is honored that he was allied with courageous colleagues like these and so many others, some of whom are here today. Rabbi Bierman confronted a whole host of significant and often controversial issues, among them the communist scare and the witch hunts.
Speak into this and get it nice and close like that.
Is this better? Okay, thank you. He confronted a whole host of significant and often controversial causes, among them the communist scare and the witch hunts of the 1950s, the civil rights movement, the war in Vietnam, the farm workers' strike, Islamophobia, of course his work with ICUJP and the Greater Los Angeles Partnership for the Homeless, support for the LGBTQ community, death penalty focus, human rights, and more. Sometimes he felt alone in his protests, especially when, even back in 1948, and through his last sermon in 2014, he expressed deep concern about justice for the people of Palestine. But more often, he was surrounded and supported by his interfaith compatriots. His Yom Kippur sermon, delivered less than a month after 9/11, gives us a sense of his commitment to the importance of those interfaith connections when he described our common humanity, the difficult but precious Jewish, Christian, Muslim affirmation precisely in the face of this crime against humanity, that we are all of us, children of God. George Regas, James Lawson, yeah, let's clap. It was beautiful. Thank you. George Regas, James Lawson, Leonard Bierman, Maher, and Hassan Hattout. These religious leaders and close friends linked the Abrahamic faiths to their ongoing commitment to peace, justice, and equality. And as a result, as UCLA history professor David Myers has written, reshaped the religious landscape of Southern California and the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Dr. Hattout had three main points of focus on interfaith work. First of all, he believed that instead of a Judeo-Christian society that is often mentioned when it comes to America, that we need to reshape it in the Abrahamic framework, that we're all descendants and followers of Abraham. And so often the sons of Abraham are mentioned, but one is forgotten, and that's the son of a slave woman of Hajar, and that was Ishmael. And so it's both Isaac and Ishmael who were sons of Abraham. And when it comes to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they're Abrahamic. They all believe in the one God. They're part of the monotheistic families. They all came from the same region. As Dr. Hattout used to say, it's not like Moses was born in Brooklyn and Jesus was born in Paris. They were all born in the same part of the world, the Middle East, and all religions originated from what we call the Holy Land. And if the Holy Land for 1,400 years during Islam's time had Jews and Muslims and Christians worshiping together, coexisting in the Holy Land, then that's something we should do here in America. Number two, he felt that it was the will of God that we're all different. There's no such thing as one religion that dominates God. God is too great to have just one religion that is going to be representing or as vicegerents, the followers of which are vicegerents on this earth. Anyone who believes in God and the last day and does good is someone who belongs to God's religion. What you name yourself and what you believe in, that is a personal choice, and it's between you and God. And so to respect and protect different religions is also part of the will of God, and that can only be done through interfaith work. And then the third reason is that he believed in movement, and I think all four leaders that represented this prophetic voice, as Leonard Bierman said, you can't separate politics from religion. If you are here to work for peace against war, if you are here to save lives against death, if you are here to say no more violence, we want nonviolence, that in and of itself is a political objective that is intertwined with religious values. And so Islam, Dr. Hathout felt that Islam in America had an opportunity to be part of an interfaith movement that would bring America closer to God's will for justice. And that's why he felt that ICUJP was probably one of his most important organizations that he was proud to serve on.
I've known George Regas for decades as a parishioner, and I'm here today because his wife, his widow, Mary, was not able to be here. So I want us all to say a prayer for her. She's really quite ill. But he would be so proud to be represented on this stage with the men he considered really his family, his brothers. George was born to a poor Greek family in Greece. His father immigrated to Knoxville, Tennessee, when George was only 5 years old, and he opened a restaurant. That's what Greeks do, they cook. And he wanted George to learn how to cook and in order to take over his restaurant. And George said when it was time for college, he felt that he knew his father wanted him to be proud, wanted to be proud of him, and he wanted him to do, if he wasn't going to do the restaurant, at least a profession that was highly esteemed and respected. So he went to medical school. And while in medical school, he continued to be just called to religion. He said he just felt his whole being knew that the faith, the belief, the conscience, the soul of man was as important, man and woman, I'm saying, of course, was as important as the physical health. And he found some great teachers and ended up going to seminary, and of course became one of the greatest religious leaders I think in the United States. My husband and I started going to All Saints Church when we moved to Pasadena in 1968. We came out from Washington, D.C. My husband was Lutheran, I was Presbyterian, and neither of us felt at home in the other's church, so we started shopping around, attended different services. And the day we went to All Saints Church in 1968, George preached one of his most classic sermons, which spoke out so brilliantly against the war in Vietnam. One of his his wealthiest donors and closest friends got up and walked out because his son had just been killed in Vietnam, and he felt that that was an outrageous thing that George did because he wanted to win the war. But George's sermon was quoted in the Los Angeles Times and really lauded in the religious community. And other faith leaders came together to support him, as they did on civil rights and so many other issues. But I think George would say it's really all of religion, all of faith, at its center has love. And he would add part of love. It wasn't in the mission statement that was read, but George was a big believer in forgiveness. And he felt that that was very central to his faith. I feel so gifted to have been close to George, to have followed him. I actually was with the ICUJP group the moment they formed. We were sitting in the basement of a church on a Friday morning talking about what our name should be, and they were talking about the Interfaith Communities United for Peace and Justice. And at the time, I was working with Human Rights Watch, and I said, you know, it should be justice and peace, because you cannot have peace without justice. And besides, I thought PJ sounded too much like peanut butter and jam. We didn't want peanut butter and jelly. Anyway, I really look forward to sharing you more of George Regas's profound sermons and contributions to our understanding of what faith really is.
Thank you. Up close. How's this? Is that good? Closer? Our dad and George were modern-day prophets, expressing wisdom and indignation, demanding that we never cease to struggle for the betterment of all. They met in 1967 at an anti-Vietnam peace rally in MacArthur Park. Our father's first recollection was how impressed and affected he was by this priest's, quote, way of speaking, how his words were linked to the movement of his body, achieving a harmony that gave his talk increased power and significance, without knowing the priest's name or anything about him. George later wrote about our father. Leonard and I met in 1967 at a peace rally and became the best of friends, a rabbi and an Episcopal priest who traveled the world together in search of peace. They attended the Paris Peace Talks together in 1973. They appeared and spoke at many events as well as protests. Dad and George also entwined their congregations, Leobeck Temple and All Saints Church, into a single ecumenical family. George also appointed Dad as All Saints' first ever rabbi in residence in 1973, a title that he cherished and held until his death in 2014. They met at Patty's restaurant halfway between the temple and the church every month for lunch. For as long as I can remember, George would always attend Yom Kippur services to listen to my dad's sermon. And in 1981, my father invited him to deliver the sermon. At the end of his life, when Dad was hospitalized, Mary and George visited Dad every evening at Cedar Sinai and came right after his death on the morning of December 24th. For over 47 years, our father and George were colleagues, best friends, and brothers.
Well, good afternoon. I am John Lawson. I'm the oldest son of the Reverend James M. Lawson Jr. As you know, he recently passed away. And so it's been, I'm not sure I've had enough time to kind of organize and categorize the lifetime of someone who lived to age 95. When thinking about interfaith work, I think that just started as an early age. I think that at some point in time early in his life, as a teenager, he took it upon himself to try to follow in the footpath of Jesus. And for him, Jesus spoke of justice and equality, and being faithful to the poor. If you know some of his history, he went to India and was there coaching soccer and teaching English. But one of the reasons why he went to India is so he could learn more about Mahatma Gandhi and try to look and study and learn as to how do you use soul force, how do you use nonviolence as a way of power. And notice it was not following a Christian, but it was following someone of a different religion. And so when he came back to America, he continued to want to study as to how to use moral force, nonviolence, to bring about equality and justice. His whole path of living in his marches and organizing in the Memphis sanitation strike included other priests, pastors, imams, and so it has always been a journey for him that it's an interfaith process. God, there is no one religion, that God moves all of us towards faith, towards equality, towards justice. So I think his whole life and his career has always been one where it's one of interfaith. It's those who are striving for justice and equality. I can remember the conversations on the phone where he or Mr. Bierman or Mr. Regas or Hathaway were on the phone for hours, okay, talking. And he would always get at the phone just excited with the conversations about justice and about peace. And he was always excited about going to lunch because he knew he would get good food. But the full discussion of how do you move a society towards more justice and peace. And I think that's why when this idea of having an interfaith justice and peace coalition, he was all over it because he knew it was part of his path towards justice and peace and equality, and that knew no religion.
I would like to invite you all to just take a moment and recall an anecdote, a brief story about your loved one's relationship with George Regas, something that just might give us a peek into the many dimensions of those relationships.
My sister Eve did a beautiful job of, I think, describing some personal recollections of George's relationship with our father. But my husband, Neil, reminded me of something that happened back in 1973. I was in college in New York, and my father was coming through New York with George on their way back to Los Angeles from Paris. And when we met them in a restaurant to get together, in walked George Regas wearing a beret. And so he looked very dashing in it and very French. But at the end of the meal, he said, "Judith, why don't you take this? I think it would look better on you." So I kept that and remembered, after Neil reminded me, that generous spirit. And as a Francophile, it meant a lot to me, too.
Well, I think the relationships really began before 9/11. We actually formed the Religious Coalition Against War in the Persian Gulf in 1991. And that's where we would have services at Holman, at All Saints, Leo Beck, and the Islamic Center of Southern California. And we would each host, I think it's the first time we had music at a mosque, which was shattering, and it was refreshing to see that. And it was really George that led the way in this. And later it formed ICUJP. The one time we remember George the most was his sermon against war, where the United States government tried to punish All Saints Church and take away its 501c3 status, and saying that they were trying to campaign for someone. And that's when Dr. Hathout, he felt that, first of all, how courageous George was in standing up up for truth against power. And that represented, when we say the prophetic voice, what does that mean? What that means is that you believe that the Word of God is more powerful than any power on this world, in this world. That there's no worldly power greater than the Word of God. And therefore, you must say it. And George would say it. He would not be bashful. He would not shy away from it. And so when he said that, we all went. I think all of us were there. And like 100 lawyers were there also to support All Saints Church. I never felt so good about lawyers than I did that day. So she has one of the best lawyers she's married to. So that stand really remains important for us for many reasons. He was standing up against war in Iraq and Afghanistan. My family's from Iraq, and now the estimates are that 800,000 children under the age of 5 were killed during the 2 Gulf Wars. And that the American public is not even aware of that. We are so sanitized when it comes to what does war mean. Even the 40,000 Gazans who have been killed and those who are being ethnically cleansed in the West Bank, we're so removed from the realities of, trying to get your loved one out from the rubble, amputated, or having to amputate someone, or having to bury someone who had just died right in front of you. These incidents of war that all 4 men felt were evil, that war is evil, and George represented that in his greatest moments. Leonard Bierman, Rabbi Leonard Bierman, his last sermon was, and I think he had many sermons like that, another Yom Kippur, another war in Gaza. And people walked out of his sermon, and Dr. Hathout would come out and stand up against Arab and Muslim governments, and people would walk out of the mosque because of that. And Reverend Jim Lawson was kicked out of Vanderbilt University because he stood for civil rights and against war. And later on, 20 years later, he was given an honorary degree at Vanderbilt University, right? So the truth does come to fruition at some point. And when you go to Atlanta, by the way, the Civil Rights Museum, it's not so much about Martin Luther King as it is about Jim Lawson training everybody in the art of civil disobedience, how he used that as a weapon, a nonviolent weapon to force the powers that be into addressing the needs of the people and doing it in a nonviolent manner. So all these represented the prophetic voice to us. And I agree, we stand on their shoulders today. And I think, sometimes I think they would say, what are you doing honoring us? You need to get out there and recruit people for this movement, because these wars are just, they've gone on for too long and too many people are suffering, and it is damaging America's soul. So for that, we applaud them, and we ask God to reward them for all the great work they've done in establishing the foundation through ICUJP.
Well, it actually started a couple decades earlier. In the summer of 1979, I'd been going to All Saints for about 8 years, I guess. I got a call from George Regas. He wanted me to come up to meet him in his office. And he had an invitation for me, and so, I had no idea what it was going to be. But he told me that he and his good friend, Rabbi Leonard Bierman, had decided, along with their friend Harold Willens, who was a wealthy businessman, who had been in the Army when the Army liberated Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and he had seen the devastation of nuclear weapons, or atomic bomb in that case. And George and Leonard decided that they wanted to put on a conference called Reversing the Arms Race. It would be a 3-day conference, a day and an evening at Leobeck Temple, followed by 2 days at All Saints Church, that would cover every aspect of the nuclear arms race and the Soviet and American Cold War. Well, at the time, I had 3 young children. The youngest was just 7 years old. I was a Girl Scout leader, a soccer mom, a Sunday school teacher. I was very active in the PTA. You get the picture. And I said, I have no idea how to put together a major conference like that. How many people do you think would come? And he said, we expect no fewer than 2,000. And I said, well, I guess I can do that. So they gave me an office in the second floor at All Saints in the office building. I think it had been a coat closet. And I did the first things that, all women know you do the first thing first. I cleaned the office. I got a mop and a broom. And then I got a telephone installed, and I bought some file cabinets, and I had a Remington manual typewriter, and I started. I had carbon copies of every letter I wrote, notes on every phone call I made. And in October of 1979, 2,000 people came for a conference called Reversing the Arms Race. We had major labor leaders, economists, of course, nuclear physicists. We had great theologians from around the country. We had even the president of Caltech, who himself was a nuclear physicist, who was the youngest member of the Manhattan Project that designed the atom bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima. He had always felt terribly guilty about his scientific genius being used as a weapon of war. We had a magnificent, you must remember, Judith and Eve, magnificent celebration at All Saints, and then a 2-day conference, or at Leobeck, a 2-day conference at All Saints, where we learned every aspect. The most memorable quote about the nuclear arms race for me was from a famous minister from Riverside Church, New York City, who said, the nuclear arms race is like 2 men in a boat. One is Russian, the other is American. They each have a drill, and they are they're competing to see who can drill the biggest hole in the bottom of the wooden boat. He said, that is the nuclear arms race. We even had some retired admirals and generals who came to speak out against the insanity of the nuclear arms race. Well, that brought together the religious community of Greater Los Angeles, and really much broader than that. And people wanted to keep that movement going because they saw it as the most important problem facing the future of life on Earth. And so we formed an organization called the Interfaith pardon me? Interfaith Center to reverse the arms race. Interfaith Center to reverse the arms race. And I became chair of that board. I was learning a lot in those days. And we had, Norman Lear and Norman Cousins. We had really important people on our board, and also a lot of clergy of all faiths. And so I really think ICUJP grew directly out of the Interfaith Center and the good work that it did.
My, I guess, memory in my dad's relationship with the other three people that we are honoring is that, one, he always ranted about going to lunch. My father loved food, and he loved to try different food. And so he was always excited to break bread with people who he thought and he believed these men were kindred souls. Kindred souls in standing up for justice, kindred souls in speaking out against violence and war, kindred souls and believe that we can be the beloved community. And so he always thought of these gentlemen as ideologically, spiritually, religiously kindred souls. And I believe this is one of the reasons why they got together. This is why one of the reasons they moved forward, because they were like-minded people.
I want to thank each of you for joining us today. I know you have to run. I know some of you have additional appointments. I just wanted to say that I think one thing that is universal in all of our religions is that a person who has passed over lives on through their qualities that we embody, and through the traditions we uphold and the work that we do that represents the same ideals. And I said that I think that can be said of every person on this panel and all of you in the audience. Thank you so much for coming.
What a wonderful history. We cannot go forward without acknowledging where we have been and lifting up those that have joined the ancestors along the way. Here to remember our fellow ICUJP members that have transitioned, please welcome ICUJP board member Carol Francis Likens. As well as being a board member, she is also an activist, retired teacher, writer, and poet. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, these are people that were in our circle. And for those of you who have not been with us since before the pandemic, we used to sit around a circle. Wonderful feeling of sitting around a circle and seeing each other. And some of the people who were really part of that circle on a regular basis have left us, but they are with us in spirit even if they are no longer in bodies. So we'd like to remember them. Blaise Bonpane, O'Neill Cannon, Sister Ann Fields, Sister Pat Cromer, Margaret Lindgren, Lydia Lopez, Rita Lowenthal, Douglas McMillan, Joseph Maislet, Joseph Prabhu, Reverend Paul Sawyer, Paula Solomon, Jahan Stanisai, and they are with us today in spirit, presente.
I just wanted to share one quick reflection I had earlier today, and that was, my God, these people that we're honoring here today, how they would feel. They all passed away before the announcement of Kamala Harris being nominated for President of the United States. I can only imagine how proud James Lawson would have been, and probably is, thinking about that idea, something he fully would have anticipated, a moment of greatness for this country, a moment of transformation. I'm just only imagining their happiness and their glee with that kind of development here. I just wanted to, the next element we're going to share with you is a kind of lead into our awards, and that is, it's been about 8 years since I started traveling to the Middle East, to Palestine, Israel, Armenia, and doing work on human rights and genocide. And also, what was really important to this process that I started 8 years ago with Stephen Fisk was all connected with ICUJP, which brought me to an amazingly instructive process of engaging with grassroots peacemakers in one of the most troubled areas of the planet right now. And as a result of that work, one of the most important themes that came out of my understanding and my interaction with people there on the ground was that the plight of women, Palestinian and Israeli, both are suffering profoundly through this toxic patriarchy that has taken grip of the region. And I think it's instructive to understand that when you engage directly with people who are involved on the ground, it gives you an entirely different perspective. And what we're going to see right now is some of the fruits of that work, working with Palestinian women in Jerusalem. So we're going to roll that tape next.
Ending the occupation is like I want to coexisting with the other side in order to know them and to let them know what I need and what I want. And this is to be awarenesses of each other and coexisting together.
Curfew in Palestine, I'm experienced it since I was little girl. Being no water, no electricity, you can't go out. Whatever you need, like milk, like bread or anything, you can't go out from the house because there is a sniper up there. He could shoot you to death. Not shooting you in the leg or in the arm. He will shoot you in the head or in the heart to shoot for kill. This is why it's too much to live under this Israeli occupation. This is too much to live under all of these military rules. This is too much to live under all of these bad circumstances. It's our rights to live a normal, like to plan your weekend and to do it as it is without an extra 2 hours because of any checkpoints could happen, or a settler stop in the road, he want to buy a sandwich and the Israeli military comes and surround him because he want to buy a sandwich from a Palestinian shop.
Me, I'm looking for freedom, liberate. I want to be like other women in this country or in the whole world, let's say. I want to walk in the street and nobody tell me what to do and what is your identity. Are you Palestinian or Israeli?
We are really facing a very tough treatment from the Israelis just for the sake and pitying the settlers who's living in West Bank. And according to international law, settlements, it's illegal. And that's under discussion too. And we have to live under it, and we have to accept that, but we have not to be like this now. We have to have a final situation, final status about what should be happening. I can't live like this all of the rest of my life.
وجبلت نوابا لنعبدهم وهم مستعبد يبكي على مستعبدي وأردتني عبدا يباع ويشترى وأردتني يأسا يعيش بلا ددي لا تنفعل هذا الكلام بلا فم لا تنذعر هذا الكلام بلا يد أنا لو عصرت رغيف خبزك في يدي لرأيت منه دمي يسيل على يدي حتى بساط المسجد وباع الكنيسة فهي من أملاكه وباع المؤذن في المزاد الأسود واطفئ ذبالات النجوم فإنها ستضيء درب التائه المتشرد حتى يتامانا أبوهم غائب
not a place. It's not just the Haram Sharif. It's not just the temple. It's not the church. Jerusalem is, everyone has a stake in Jerusalem. In my opinion, it should be owned by everyone, and it shouldn't be exclusive to anyone. If this city is not opening its doors to everyone, then there will be no peace in the world. This is the city of peace for thousands of years. And everyone who wants to learn how peace looks like and how can it be lived, they should come here. Everyone has to have an access to it. The reason why Jerusalem is sad, the reason why Jerusalem is being not the place for peace, is that many thousands of the world are denied access to it. And that's inhuman, because it means everything to everyone. And it's not just the Middle Easterns, it's not the Arabs, it's not the Christians, it's not the Muslims and the Jews. Everyone who came through this city for thousands of years have a stake in this city. Her doors have to be open to everyone, and that's the equation for peace.
Thank you very much. Let's give a hand to Robert. Our first recipient of the 2024 Reverend George F. Regas Courageous Peacemaker Award is Hidab Tarifi. Hidab was born in Gaza, Palestine, and lived in Kuwait until after the first Gulf War, when she moved to Los Angeles, and has been active in the Muslim and interfaith communities in Southern California since 1994, working on building bridges and bringing people together. Hidab has served on the board of several Muslim non-profit organizations, including the New Horizons School, Los Angeles, Shura Council of Southern California, and Islamic Networks Group. She was elected to be the first chairwoman of both the Muslim Public Affairs Council in 2007 and the Islamic Center of Southern California in 2016. Hidab served and continues to serve on the boards of several interfaith groups, organizations such as the University Religious Conference at UCLA, the Los Angeles Council of Religious Leaders, and the Academy of Judaic, Christian, and Islamic Studies. Hidab Tufari's voice is one that is very much needed and welcomed at this time. She has an inner strength that is able to speak forcefully about injustices and crimes committed on the people of Palestine. And she has the knowledge, empathy, and compassion to be able to relate the plight of her people to those in similar situations around the globe. Please welcome Hidab Tarifi. This award simply says, things that are profound, not simple. Hidab Tarefi is a unique leader. She has been active in the Muslim and interfaith communities of Southern California since 1994, working on building bridges and bringing people together for the purpose of creating justice and peace, not only in Palestine, but globally as well.
Thank you.
Greetings of peace, everyone. Good job, Robert, showing this video right before I got here and getting me emotional. I'm grateful to ICUJP for this honor, and I am humbled by the recognition. It was an honor for me to know the founders, the four founders, the giants that you just heard about. I was definitely honored to know them and meet them in person, and certainly learn from them and to follow their footsteps. I mean, I looked at also the previous list of honorees by ICUJP, and not only that, I was in great company, Congratulations to the other recipients who will follow. A couple of comments that I wanted to share. First, I love the motto of the ICUJP, that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. And may I also add that religious communities might stop being silent when there is war and violence. In my 32 plus years of interfaith and civic work, and in pursuing justice and peace, I never thought that the time would come when faced with this ugly reality that sadly not all faith leaders are taking the stand that these four giants had took to work for justice and peace. And I might as well add that they got it right for calling it justice and peace. And for the longest time, through my work with the Interfaith, they kept calling peace and justice. And honestly, peace will not be attained until justice prevails. So I'm grateful for their wisdom. And today is day 337 in this genocide in Gaza that we're all watching in real time. You saw the video and you saw the suffering of Palestinians under occupation. But believe me, the Palestinians like me who are living in the diaspora, they don't have it easy as well. All my life, I actually have been denied my identity as a Palestinian. And almost for the first decade, since I started doing interfaith work here in LA, I never mentioned my identity as Palestinian until I remember Dr. Hathout, peace be upon him, told me, Hidab, if you don't speak for yourself and for your people, who will? And from that day forward, I vowed to be the voice for the voiceless, to be the voice for my people, and to continue bringing their plight, their history, and their right, not just for the land, but for freedom. And in this regard, I humbly accept this award, and I dedicate it to my people, my family in Gaza. I dedicate it to my community, my interfaith community, especially my new family, Pasadena for Palestine, to my family and friends near and far, and I thank you for coming to celebrate with me and join me in receiving this award. I'm really grateful and honored. I want to say thank you for my sister Hala, who really puts up with me and with my schedule. I've Now we're almost getting into the 12th month of this genocide. I vowed that Gaza will be my priority. Palestine will be my priority. Until Gaza is free, until Palestine is free, and God help me, Gaza is rebuilt. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Our second recipient of the 2024 George F. Regas Courageous Peacemaker Award is Tahil Sharma. Tahil was born to a Hindu father and a Sikh mother, and following the Oak Creek, Wisconsin shooting of a Sikh at a Sikh temple in 2012, Tahil became involved in efforts for interfaith literacy and social justice, and has been doing this work professionally for the past several years. He serves as one of 3 interfaith ministers in residence for the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles, and has worked with Interfaith Youth Corps, the Parliament of World Religions, the Gebord Center, and the Interreligious Council of Southern California. Tahil could not be with us today, but he has recorded this video for us.
I'm still very flabbergasted that I'm on this panel this morning, because I really don't feel like I can, present or explain the expertise that others might, because I have not been on this earth as long. But what I will say is this is an opportunity for me to really discover the roots of what brings empires down. We got to discover today that it took someone picking up salt and mud just to get rid of an empire out of their country. And that's not an easy thing to think about. But it's something that we've come to learn over time, because it is within our world's traditions to rebel against tyranny and throw it out in non-violent ways. And the way that I've come to understand that through Gandhiji has been through a lot of studies as a child, getting to understand what nonviolence was, but over time also beginning to understand that the roots of the world's traditions have been teaching us this since the beginning of time. Within the Hindu tradition, there is a mention of ahimsa, or nonviolence, the very principle that is very motivating for Gandhian legacy and for Dr. King's legacy. Within the Hindu tradition, there is some light mention of it in the original scriptures, or the Vedas. But there are supplementary texts called the Upanishads, which are sort of the dialogues that are had between teachers and students, or gurus and their disciples. And one of the Upanishads, which is the Chandogya Upanishad, talks about the 5 main principles that run Hindus and the Hindu theology. The first is ahimsa, or nonviolence, satyavachanam, which is truthfulness, dhanam, which is charity, tapo, which is mindfulness and meditation, and arjanam, which is sincerity. Those 5 principles are what are supposed to make a Hindu whole. And we're talking about scriptures that are going back to the 7th and 8th century BC. That is almost 2,700 years ago. We've already been given a foundation to understand how we bring truthfulness and strength into this world. But there are other scriptures where the Blvd comes from. The story of the god Krishna with his dialogue with the charioteer Arjun, who are going onto the battlefield. This is a story about a battlefield. It comes from a larger text called the Mahabharata, which talks about this dialogue between families, how they fall apart and how justice prevails. In the 17th book of that series, there's known as the Prasthanik Parv, which talks in length about how in all of this chaos, in all of these arguments, in all of this war that's about to happen, your greatest sacrifice is nonviolence. Your best friend is nonviolence. The best thing you can do in this world to avoid war at all costs is to be nonviolent. And this is coming from a book that is famously talking about how you achieve justice no matter what. But it is always with peace and nonviolence in mind.
Hi everyone, my name is Tahil Sharma, and it's a privilege for me to accept this George Regas Courageous Peacemaker Awards from Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace, or ICUJP. I really don't know what to say except thank you. It's really an honor and a privilege to be committed to the work of justice and equity for people, here in the United States and around the world. I would, of course, like to also congratulate the other honoree, my dear sister, Hedab Tarifi, who is, I think, way more deserving than me of this award. I'd like to be really thankful to my parents who are not present today at the gathering with you all, but I know who send a lot of their blessings and support. But I'd also like to thank all of you, the people who are committed to this work of interfaith cooperation as a daily routine, that are really committed to this idea of looking at the world not just a place for peace, but making that peace possible. I'm really thankful for all of you to be committed to all of those different issues that exist in our society, and who have actually chosen this as a place for us to say that our intersectionality is what gives us value. It gives us presence, and it gives us hope to be able to change the status quo of oppression. The idea of being a courageous peacemaker, I think, means a lot more than what people are willing to realize. I mean, we're looking at leaders like Dr. Maher Rathut, Reverend Jim Lawson, and the Reverend George Regas, who stood up for their values as people representing various faith traditions, who honored the sanctity of all people and were willing to go out of their way to defend the defenseless and to honor the dishonored. And the work that we have to do to change systems, cultures, and norms for peace started with folks who were being able to speak truth to power. And I think we have an opportunity to continue that work. I've been honored in this way just to be a renewal to that amazing work. And I think we have a really big responsibility to think about how each of us can be a part of this work for a better tomorrow. And it's only possible when we're all involved. So I'm actually really thankful that each of you are just as committed, if not more committed than I am, to this work for a better world. Thank you so much.
Accepting the award for Tahil, please welcome Devin Barney and Michael Hansen. The award says, Tahil Sharma has been a powerful advocate for the interfaith movement, working with diverse organizations and individuals to find a common ground of understanding and cooperation. In honor of his steadfastness in building a beloved community through educational and engaging dialogue, as well as through the lens of promoting justice and equity for all, ICUJP honors Tahil Sharma with the 2024 Reverend George F. Regas Courageous Peacemaker Award.
Hello, thank you all for welcoming us here and allowing us to accept this on his behalf. I'm sure Tahil has said it the best, but I could not say more to say that you've really honored someone who is relentlessly dedicated to this work and brings his authentic self no matter where he goes, and I think will uphold the principles of the ICUJP very well and his continued commitment to the work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The third recipient is Simone Zimmerman. Simone is an organizer and strategist from Los Angeles and is now based in Brooklyn. She is the protagonist of the film Israelism, about the deepening generational divide in the American Jewish community over Israel and Palestine. And she is currently the director of media and special projects for the Diaspora Alliance, an international organization dedicated to fighting anti-Semitism and its instrumentalization. She serves on the board of Jews for Racial and Economic Justice Action and the advisory board of Jewish Currents magazine. Simone Zimmerman is a founder of If Not Now, a wonderful organization that has as one of its core tenets the belief that liberation of any community is bound up in the liberation of all people, and in this era, particularly those in Israel and Palestine. If Not Now is dedicated to fighting racism, anti-Semitism, inequality, and militarism in all its forms and in any part of the world. Simone could not be with us today, but she has recorded this video for us.
Well, take a look at this. Dozens of protesters here arrested in downtown LA today after bringing the morning commute to a standstill on the 110 freeway. The group that organized the protest describes their members as American Jews calling for an Israeli ceasefire in Gaza. And tonight, we're learning much more about this group. NBC4's Conan Nolan is here now with that part of the story. Conan.
Yeah, this organization behind today's protest is known to law enforcement around the nation. Their goal is simple. They want the U.S. to stop its backing of the Israeli government and want an end to the war in Gaza, a mission they believe requires them to take to the streets. This time, it was our turn. The shutdown of the Harbor Freeway downtown by members of the group If Not Now, protesting the Israeli response to the October 7th terrorist attacks. The same group that shut down the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge last month clashed with police outside a meeting of the Democratic National Committee and protested inside the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol. If Not Now is not new. Made up primarily of younger progressive Jewish Americans, the group started a decade ago, protesting what it believed was the Israeli military's disproportionate reaction to Hamas rocket attacks from Gaza. And while the organization condemned the October 7 terrorist attack, they have also vehemently opposed the Israeli response and the Biden administration's support for Israel.
So today, we will still say the Kiddush and consecrate this day, but we will not be drinking any wine, for too much blood has been shed and too much joy has been lost. We hope for all of you that you find the spiritual nourishment and rest to continue.
We are only for ourselves, then who are we? As long as some are still in chains, then none of us are free. And we are only for ourselves, then who are we? As long as some are still in chains, then none of us are free.
We are here tonight, together as a community, to let it be known that on this Shabbat we cannot rest.
If not now, when? It's made up of Jews from different backgrounds and political stances working to open up more space for Jews to become active around Gaza and the occupation. We've been saying Kaddish for the Palestinians and Israelis who have died in the violence, and also practicing civil disobedience to demand accountability from major Jewish institutions that claim to represent us.
We are horrified that what is happening in Gaza is happening in our name.
Hello everyone, my name's Simone Zimmerman and I'm one of the co-founders of If Not Now. I actually grew up in Los Angeles, but unfortunately I can't be there with you this evening because I now live in New York City. But on behalf of If Not Now, I'm so grateful and honored to be able to accept this award and to be able to help celebrate the incredible work of Interfaith Communities United for Justice and Peace. I'm so grateful to groups like ICUJP who have been uplifting the prophetic and justice-oriented traditions embedded in our myriad religious texts and helping bring communities together to fight against war and towards a more just, equitable, and peaceful world for all people. If Not Now was founded in the summer of 2014 during a military assault on the Gaza Strip that was unprecedented in its magnitude. Over 2,000 Palestinians were killed that summer, including over 500 children. We wanted to grieve. We wanted to fight the war, and we were searching for the tools of mourning and protest from the wisdom of our own Jewish tradition as we poured into the streets in protest, disrupting business as usual, bringing the crisis of our community's support for that war to their doorsteps. Today, as over 41,000 Palestinians are confirmed dead in Gaza, including over 16,500 children. This is by the most conservative estimates. Again, we're back in the streets because we refuse to cave to that despair, to inaction, and to cede our religious traditions to those who use them to justify policies of mass death. We refuse to ignore the lessons of our own history, and we've been transformed by bearing witness to the horrors of this genocide in Gaza. We refuse to stay silent and to sit idly by the blood of Palestinian children. We know that our blood is no redder than theirs, and we grieve alongside Palestinian and Israeli families who have been shattered this year by the violence. Every single life that has been lost is an entire world. And we know that nobody living in that region, not Israeli hostages, not the Israeli people, and certainly not the Palestinian people, are safer under Netanyahu's fascist regime, and that no one is guaranteed a future of freedom or dignity or safety when this government continues to inflict such cruelty without facing any consequences or accountability. And we also know that no one is safer here at home. when politicians ignore the interconnections between rising anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, and instead pit our communities against each other and tell us this is a zero-sum fight. Jewish people are not safer when we are made the face of America's police state or war machine. And we're so grateful to those who understand that fighting anti-Semitism and fighting for Palestinian freedom are mutually intertwined struggles. This is all part of fighting fascism in this country too. So I just want to say that in this moment of such fear, racism, militarism, and nationalism that is reminiscent of other dark moments that we've faced in our histories, our voices of sanity and humanity and love for all people are more essential than ever. I've been so glad to hear from, if not now, LA chapter, who have been in the streets and in community together with you all over these last 11 months of horror and heartbreak. Because we know that everything we've seen over the last 11 months didn't come out of nowhere. And even if a ceasefire were brokered tomorrow, the death, devastation, and destruction is so great that it's going to take years or even generations to heal and to rebuild. And so ultimately, to stop the genocide in Gaza, to end Israeli apartheid, and to realize a thriving future for all Israelis and Palestinians, and to build multiracial democracy here at home, it's going to take all of us. We know that none of us can do it alone, and that we need each other. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Accepting the 2024 Reverend George F. Regas Courageous Peacemaker Award for Simone Zimmerman, if not now, is Matthew. Matthew Holman. The award reads, Simone Zimmerman has been active in many aspects of interfaith reconciliation and cooperation, from being one of the funders of If Not Now, an organization dedicated to demanding equality, justice, and a thriving future for all Palestinians and Israelis, to working on issues of anti-Semitism and persecution of peoples around the world. In honor of her tireless work for justice and peace, and her ongoing legacy of creating powerful alliances and guiding effective engagement between diverse groups, interfaith communities, United for Justice and Peace honors Simone Zimmerman, and If Not Now, with the 2024 Reverend George F. Regas Courageous Peacemaker Award.
Thank you so much, Reverend Chase, and every one of you who has joined us here with ICUJP for this incredible, meaningful, and transformative event celebrating all of the work we do for peace, for justice, right here in Los Angeles, in Palestine and Israel, and throughout the world. I'm deeply honored as the partnership's lead of If Not Now Los Angeles to accept this award, but as soon as we can, make sure that Simone over in New York City gets it. I'm also it's worth mentioning that for my day job, some folks might know that I'm the LA organizer for CLU, which I bring up just to mention that CLU is another legacy of Reverend Lawson, and I believe Reverend Regas and Rabbi Bierman, and so many of those same founders, part of the legacy that they have carried on with us today. But today, I'm literally wearing my If Not Now kippah, and what an incredible reflection that Simone left us. So I will not add too much of it to it, but just to say that, can I get a show of hands who has seen the film Israelism? that that Simone is featured in, as well as a few other folks. So I see a number of hands. So I know for those who have seen it, it's a very transformative reflection on these dynamics in the Jewish community. But if you haven't, I really encourage you to watch it, not only because it illuminates why this mostly young but also intergenerational movement of Jews on the left, but for justice and peace, are showing up every day in the streets in coalitions with Palestinians and with all of our communities to end the genocide, to end the apartheid system, to win a ceasefire, to win justice, but also because you hear from Palestinians directly in the West Bank, in particular in that film, and seeing the connections between the stories that so many of our people in our Jewish movement did not receive that education growing up. You know, not everyone in our movement has the same experiences, but so many young Jews that are part of our movement have experiences just like Simone had in the film. And when they had conversations, lived experiences with Palestinians, when they went to places like the West Bank, to see that this is in a deeply oppressive system that we do not want to be perpetuated in our name as Jews, in the name of Jewish safety. As it was shared in the video, the name of If Not Now comes from a quote from a holy text, from Pirkei Avot, from the Mishnah, where it says, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? And I think that if you really delve deep into those three things, I think it not only reflects our approach to solidarity, If Not Now, solidarity with Palestinians, but with everyone in our community, making the connections not only between Palestinian liberation and the true fight against anti-Semitism, but for every struggle we're in here in Los Angeles, for Black lives, against white supremacy, against racism, for economic justice, labor justice, environmental justice. And I'm deeply honored not only to make sure we send this to Simone right away, but as If Not Now LA, to continue to be in the movement, to be in solidarity with ICUJP and with all of you. We know that we can build a better world together. We're so deeply blessed to be here with you all today. Thank you so much.
Our brothers and sisters, we are going to live into a hopeful future. We have the leadership, we have the heart. The future belongs to us. I'd like to introduce Rebecca Arvuzzi, a board member of ICUJP and an intellectual property and technology attorney. She worships online with Sabil in East Jerusalem, studies the Torah with Bet Tikkun in the Bay Area, and sings with the Agape International Choir in Los Angeles. She is an animal welfare advocate defending the legacy of the late Senator Tom Hayden's legislation that protects animals in California shelters, and also volunteers with Jewish Voice for Peace, Code Pink, and the Black Lives Matter movement. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Louis, and thank you everyone for coming today on behalf of ICUJP. We have some calls to action for you. We hope you enjoyed the program and learned a lot and are motivated now to help us uplift our message that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. So if you look at your program on the back here, we have some QR codes where, like the first one there, you can check to see if your elected representatives have called for a ceasefire. This is a tracker that was put together by Jewish Voice for Peace and the Working Families Party. And so the next step, what you could do is, if they have not called for a ceasefire, or they have not called for an arms embargo against Israel, that you can call your congressional representatives and ask them that you do so. Our friends from the American Friends Service Committee have put together, they give us a link here where it makes it very easy for you to directly call your representative's office and talk to somebody on their staff and request if your representative to ask for an arms embargo, ask for a ceasefire, or if they have called for an arms embargo, you can thank them for doing that. There's another link there to find your elected officials if you don't know who they are. And there is a link also for you to see which companies, which businesses, which entities are profiting from this military economy. Again, that was put together by our friends from AFSC. And then finally, there's another link there for the companies profiting from war. So I invite you also, if you weren't able to make a donation online or make a donation at our table, that you can also scan the code down here and get on our mailing list, and also find links to make a donation to ICUJP so we can continue our great work and bring you the programs that we've been bringing to you these past several years. Thank you very much.
Friends, again, I thank you all for being here today. ICUJP has an energetic board led by Attorney Steve Rohde, and I want you to give them all a round of applause. Continue to be part of our work for the survival of the human race. Continue to be part of our world for the future of humanity. George Regas was right. Religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. So I ask you to stand for a benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Lift up the light of his countenance upon you and grant you peace and joy this day and until the end of time. Amen. Okay. Have you lost weight or something? I don't know, it might have.